Our correspondent Amina Taylor joins us from London to give us the latest on this visit. Greg Simmons is a researcher at the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies, who joins us from Uppsala, Sweden, for an analysis. Okay, welcome to you both. Amina, let me first start with you. Tell us more about what Zelensky has said, what he, I'm sure, has requested, and also the venue of where this took place and what that symbolizes.
Well, if there were any doubt, Kaveh, that the British state apparatus is very much in favor of the Ukrainian position in this conflict, then you need not look any further than the rapturous welcome that Zelensky was given by British parliamentarians from both sides of the aisle. I mean, they can't agree on, how to end strike action here. They can't agree on ending austerity or trying to do something to deal with this cost of living crisis, but they can all agree that the celebrity commander in chief, in the form of Zelensky, is greeted in this fashion. I mean, I will touch on the fact that he was at Buckingham Palace to meet Charles III later, but this is very much the drive in the Zelensky Ukraine machine here to drum up more support. Anytime there is any visual aids here that Russia may be advancing, or the conflict might not be going the way the West might have hoped and not as quickly as they would have hoped, then we get these surprise visits. We had the situation in Washington just a few weeks ago. Britain became the second country to greet Zelensky on one of these surprise missions. He's now on his way to Paris for more of the same. I mean, it is very difficult to look at the way in which Downing Street first, as you mentioned in your introduction there, talked of the increasing sanctions that it was trying to level on Russian interests, though I can't understand where there'd be more sanctions to be found, if I'm honest, since everything is being squeezed within an inch of its life. If it has any kind of Russian connections, Russophobia is at its highest level. And I think you see that it's coming from the state down. Very few Brits would have known the name Volodymyr Zelensky before the beginning of this conflict, but the way in which his reputation as this wartime leader is being amplified, and the different pledges that Britain is making as a country, more armaments, more support for its troops, the Marines being trained, soldiers being trained, I can't see how this can be anything other than a road to further escalation. Why would you not want to de-escalate this crisis, not turn it into a race into who can throw more munitions and support at Ukraine? I simply don't understand the logic here, Kav.
All right, Greg Simmons, taking a look at one aspect of this, which perhaps is not really perhaps touched on that much while Amina was talking there, that came to my mind to ask you, and that is how we see Zelensky come into these high-profile venues in order to make his presence known. Okay, so today we saw the venue that he was in, and then weeks prior to that when he made his trip to the U.S. I think in some opening bells down on Wall Street, he's also made appearances. I think he's also made appearances at the Oscars, if I'm not mistaken, and different types of venues where the masses are watching. Is that a way for the governments that are involved to tell the people or to highlight Ukraine in the way that they need to, so that they can push out the aid to, or extend the aid to Ukraine, so that the ordinary Main Street doesn't get too angry and frustrated based on their own economic conditions? Is that one way, perhaps, of looking at this?
Well, I think you need to look at it from the perspective of political marketing. And this political marketing is trying to market Zelensky as some kind of Churchill, this brave wartime commander who's standing up for the world. I mean, this was exactly what the British and the Americans did to Winston Churchill before the United States got involved in the Second World War. They needed to sell the person in order to garner public support. But, I mean, if one looks at the effect, well, I mean, that Churchill went to the United States as Zelensky is going to the United Kingdom. I mean, it ended Churchill and Britain as being any kind of subject and turned it into an object, because they're going as a junior. They're going with the cap in hand saying, please sir, can I have some more? And this is what it is. It's a begging to try and drum up some political support and some military weapons which are going to be second rate and not really alter the outcome, which is going to be soon decided.
All right, Amina, since, and I'm sure you've been following the conflict in Ukraine, one of the things that has happened recently, which has been touched on, but hasn't really gone into that much in terms of the depth of it, is the corruption that has engulfed the government, where there had to not only be these high-profile either dismissals or resignations, but there was a shakeup. Is this maybe another reason why Zelensky has to make this, I guess, trip that he's made to the UK, for example, to show that, hey, you know, give us the money because it's, you know, I've done what I needed to do to get rid of the bad apples, I guess.
Listen, in what your colleague there in Sweden was talking about, this kind of marketing of Zelensky as a particular wartime figure. The branding in all of this is very important, and we just need to look at the outfit that Zelensky would choose to appear in, for example, in Buckingham Palace. I mean, it's unheard of that you would turn up to meet the king without actually being in full formal or traditional wear. But in answer to your other question here, there were questions that were being asked of where the funds are going, where are the supplies going? Does he actually have a firm grasp on what is going on from the moment this aid comes into the country? Is it being put to the use that it was designated for? It's one thing for Britain to be just cutting checks and sending supplies and doing training, but there will come a time of reckoning. There will be an investigation, an audit.
Okay.
Where did the money go? What happened to these funds? And I think Zelensky's trying to head off any of that criticism early. And just very briefly here, he's supposed to be going to Brussels tomorrow on Thursday for an EU meeting. And there was some disquiet about the fact that he chose to stop off in London and Paris before that. So there's still that clamor to be seen as the countries and the entities supporting this Ukrainian issue. And my question still remains, why is no one trying to actively de-escalate this crisis?
Sure.
Instead of trying to amp things up? Are people really looking forward to World War III here? Are they?
Really? That's a great question. Unfortunately, we just don't have the time, but thank you very much for that. Amina Taylor there, correspondent from London, from Uppsala, Sweden. We appreciate it. Greg Simmons, researcher at the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies. Thank you to you both. With that, we come to an end for this news review. Thanks for tuning in.